I bought a laptop for just 10 euros. Will this be useful in 2026? And does it game? Let's find out after the intro.
It's the Anarchy with me on the exciting guy!
Here's the big fat unit. It came with Windows 10 pre-installed, running on the original old hard drive. That's taken a while to load. As you can see here, we've got 4 whole gigabytes of RAM, a Core i5-2310M CPU, and an NVIDIA GeForce 610M GPU with a gig of VRAM of its own. It's a 17-inch beast with a display that has a whopping 1,440,000 pixels, or 1600 by 900 resolution. Let's quickly turn it off again and replace the slow drive with an SSD to install Linux. We've got our hard disk over here, an empty memory slot, so it seems the current 4 gigs are soldered onto the board, and here's our wireless adapter thingy. In case anyone needs a Windows 7 key, here you go. Alright, away with that drive. I'm adding a 128GB SSD. These are cheap to get, even in today's by AI inflated market. Alright, let's go! I installed CashOS, which I didn't capture. It runs fine using this actually, even with just 4 gigs of RAM. There's enough room for basic desktoping and interwebbing and stuff. Obviously, I needed to try some games. For that I figured I needed that GeForce GPU. But after about 2 evenings of trying to get that to work in Linux, I found that the Intel HD4000 iGPU is actually more powerful than the GeForce 610M. Why, ASUS? Why is there a dedicated GPU in this thing that's worse than the iGPU? I could get Prime offloading to work with a Nouveau driver, by the way, but yeah. Nah. So today we're going to take a look at Intel's HD4000 performance. I did try to also add some extra memory in the system, but with the games I tried it didn't really make a difference. So I figured it would be nice to see what performance you can expect from a cheap laptop, with the only upgrade being the cheap SSD I used. I went with a mixture of old and slightly younger games, but nothing too extreme, as this machine isn't capable of that much. The HD4000 only seems to support Vulkan 1.0, which severely limits its use with DXVK. Some games run using Proton Sarac, but even that uses parts of the Vulkan spec that this iGPU is unable to provide. So for some games I had to revert using WineD3D. On games that did run with DXVK, I didn't see much of a difference compared to WineD3D though. So I guess an early conclusion could be that this machine would probably be better for gaming on Windows. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. All games in this video are available on GOG. I'll leave some affiliate links in the description in case you're interested. Let's start off with the original BioShock, rendered at 720p resolution and at medium settings. 20–30 FPS. Surprisingly playable at this low frame rate though. Brütal Legend at 720p. This game ran at some 20-ish FPS. Not a great experience. Doom 3 BFG Edition ran pretty decent at full desktop resolution. VSync was enabled, but even without it, it wouldn't go over 60 FPS somehow. Flashout 3D, which you can get for free on GOG, ran at full 1600 by 900 desktop resolution as well, with a good quality preset. I'm getting a very playable 50-ish FPS on this laptop. FlatOut at 720p runs okay-ish, some 20–25 FPS, which for this game seems to be quite alright actually. I found myself finishing the race instead of quitting after having recorded enough for this video. Saints Row 4 at 1024 by 576 resolution and the low preset is not the most fun I've ever had in a game, let's call it that. Styx, Master of Shadows, also at 1024 by 576, gives me similar performance as we saw in Saints Row 4. This somehow feels a bit more playable though? I don't know, still not a great experience to be honest. Brütal Legend at 720p, an okay 35-ish FPS. A little less in water though. All in all, not the worst experience imaginable, especially for this price. So what about just running Windows? To be honest, on Windows 10 it's quite usable as well, still utilizing the same setup with just 4 gigs of RAM. In order to test the same games, I disabled the GT610M GPU. I'll be running them at the same settings as before, unless stated otherwise. To start off with BioShock again, we already see a much higher frame rate, some 40-45 FPS in general. Brütal Legend, a DirectX 9 game, also runs better on Windows, but not by as much, providing some 20-25 FPS here. Doom 3, however, utilizing OpenGL, is a bit worse on Windows, also hitting 60 FPS, but dropping to lower numbers way more often. Flashout 3D now runs at the highest possible setting and gives me more frames per second than before, often hitting 60 FPS. I couldn't find a way to disable VSync, so I guess it might actually be able to do more. FlatOut now runs at full desktop resolution and is also hitting 60 FPS most of the time. Saints Row 4 doesn't allow me to select 1024 by 576 on Windows, so we're running at 720p or 1280 by 720 this time. Performance on this higher resolution is similar to Linux, which means it's actually performing way better. 720p sure wasn't playable on Linux. The same can be said about Styx, Master of Shadows. At 720p, I get even better performance compared to 1024 by 576 on Linux. Some 30-35 FPS this time. Brütal Legend also performs way better, hitting frame rates in or near water that were higher than the FPS we got outside of that on Linux. About double the frames per second? I guess this proves that Linux is not a solution for gamers on old hardware. If the card doesn't fully support Vulkan 1.3 or higher, the whole DirectX to Vulkan or OpenGL translation simply slows everything down by a lot. Now that we're on Windows anyway, does anyone care to see how the GeForce 610M chip does? No? Well, click away then, cause I'm gonna show it anyway. In BioShock, we're back to frame rates comparable to what Linux provided me on the Intel HD4000. Brütal Legend drops a few frames, say 20% less. Doom 3 on the other side actually does pretty much comparable to the HD4000 on Windows. Flashout 3D hits 60 FPS, but drops to lower frame rates way more often this time. FlatOut on the other hand, no difference at all. Probably because VSync doesn't allow it to reach any higher than 60 FPS. Saints Row 4, pretty similar to the HD4000 actually. Styx Master of Shadows is pretty horrible compared to the HD4000 though. Tomb Raider Legend was a big surprise. This is the only game I tested that runs way better on the GeForce 610M. Say about a third higher than the HD4000? Very interesting to say the least. For just €10, I'd say I got a pretty decent laptop. Alright, the battery is completely dead and I had to use an external keyboard because the W on the laptop doesn't respond to anything. But apart from that, it's a perfectly fine working laptop that can be great for general use and is even capable to do some light gaming. It does again show that old hardware like this runs great on Linux, just not for gaming. The absence of Vulkan 1.3 or higher makes translating DirectX to Vulkan impossible in most cases, leaving us with WinD3D that just doesn't perform as good. The only OpenGL game I tested ran better on Linux, but that's the only win for Linux. I read that Tomb Raider Legend should be able to run with an OpenGL backend as well, but I had no luck trying to do so. That might have helped, I don't know. I still wonder why ASUS put that GeForce 610M in this thing. Apart from Tomb Raider Legend, it performed similar or worse than the iGPU. Why? What's the point? Alright, that's enough rambling. I'm going to sign off. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time.